open up the Amity Regional Board of Education meeting for Monday, April 20th. It is now 6:34. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2020 meeting found on page 3.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Belfanti, if you don't mind my interjecting, I'm just going to remind everyone that if you can, please mute yourself during some of our discussions so we don't hear background noise. When it comes time to actually either have a motion or to vote, the motion, you can unmute yourself and make the motions. And then when it comes time to vote, we'll do a roll call. It'll be alphabetical. It'll take us a little longer, but it's much easier for Ms. Perro to follow if we do it that way. And then at that point, you can either unmute yourself or you can give us a big energetic thumbs up or a wave, and then we'll know that we have a yay or a nay. And so that will certainly help us out a lot.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Byers. Okay, so if someone would like to make a motion for the March 9th meeting minutes, then we can, welcome Steve, then we can vote on that.
So moved.
To approve.
Okay.
So I heard a first from Mr. Davis.
Correct.
And I see a second from Mr. Reed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes?
All right, so hearing none, I'm going to propose that we call the roll. Mr. Belfanti?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
She's muted.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson? I see a thumbs up. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Let's see, Mr. DeMayo? I see a thumbs up. Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Hang on, I'm trying to find, there we go, okay. I got a lot of different screens going on. I see a thumbs up. Ms. McCrovin?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Okay. So that motion would pass, the approval of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. So next item is the student report. And we do have a student with us.
Yes, hi. So a very short report this time, as you might imagine. Just a few updates. The student government has created a Facebook during this time where we haven't been in school. And we've been posting daily questions and challenges to increase student engagement and involvement, and to kind of supplement the social aspect of school that was also lost. The class of 2020 Instagram has started posting like college decisions for seniors, because we did lose our decision day where all the seniors would typically walk in with their t-shirts on. So that has been a virtual replacement. Many clubs have also resorted to using Zoom to carry on with the club meetings and activities, and the Trident actually published a special edition issue of the coronavirus on the coronavirus, which was distributed virtually. And overall, students have been adjusting to distance learning, mostly smoothly working out individual issues with their teachers, and today was the first day of quarter 4. So that is all I have for you guys, and I think I am going to continue watching the meeting via the YouTube. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ella.
Ella. Thank you, Ella.
Does anyone have any questions for Ella? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report, personnel report, and the superintendent's report. Dr. Byers.
Okay, thank you. So first off, very briefly with the personnel report, I would just like to let the board know that throughout this process, we've been negotiating memorandums of agreement with our various unions, really to talk about how we're going to continue to essentially hold true to the governor's executive order, which says to pay our school employees to the greatest extent possible, while at the same time making sure that we are being fiscally responsible with our money that the taxpayers provide to us. At this point, I'm very pleased that we've managed to negotiate 4 MOUs with 4 of our unions, the paraeducators, the administrative assistants, the teachers, and the nurses. And in all of those, we are going to be able to potentially reap some additional support from those groups, provided that we actually are able to ever open up our school buildings again before June 30th. So that's our little catch there. The one group we haven't had to have a negotiation with are custodians, because they basically are continuing, I'll say, life as normal, in the sense that they still have responsibilities and duties every day and come to work and report, you know, on time and for their assigned hours. But that has been a good step in the right direction. I would be remiss if I didn't take this moment to recognize that Mr. Siza did submit his letter of retirement, which you will see in the personnel report. That will be effective September 30th. And I can't express from my own perspective how much of a loss this is going to be for the district, and what a difficult set of shoes that is going to be to fill. We will start working on that posting, but I would just like to let the board know that. And just to say, at this point, although I'm sure there will be more accolades, that Amity has been extremely fortunate to have Jim working for and with us in this community, and I think we're all going to sorely feel that loss. Going on to the superintendent's report, one of the things that I think is extremely important to highlight is the amount of professional learning that has gone into putting us into an offsite learning program. It started really in the fall when we had convocation that was essentially built around technology, and our teachers had opportunities to go to breakout sessions and start working on different ways to implement technology in their classroom. They did this really more in anticipation of becoming a one-to-one district in the upcoming years, not because we actually thought we would have to do it in a 1-week period, like instantly. So that was helpful. But since we have been online, I would really like to commend our technology department, as well as our library and media specialists, and Lisa Lassen, who every day have a half-hour technology professional learning session for our teachers. That is both an open Zoom meeting, but then it's also simultaneously recorded so people can watch that. This has been happening literally since the first day we started offsite learning, which means that we've had close to 15 days already of professional learning and how to operate our offsite learning platform. And what they're really doing is responding to the questions and the needs of the staff. So that has been extremely tremendous in helping us get this program off the ground. I'd also like to recognize the fact that we are doing the Grab and Go lunch program. I keep the board up to date on this periodically. We are servicing all of the families in Bethany, Orange, and Woodbridge. And as of today, and this does not include today's numbers, we've served 10,124 meals to our families since we started the program on March 18th. We continue to see those numbers grow. We can sort of almost see the pattern of unemployment increasing proportional to the amount of lunches that we're serving to our families. I would also like to tremendously thank Ms. Loomis, Ms. Kovalek, and our Chartwell's cafeteria staff, because they have been working constantly to continue to provide these services to our families. We have a lot of volunteers who help us, the custodial staff who helps with setup and cleanup. And it's really just an amazing amount of support that we're providing for our community. And I've had a lot of people express their surprise at how many meals we're serving to the communities that we have around here. But 10,000 is a tremendous number of bagged lunches to be handing out over the course of essentially a 3 or 4 week period. Our high school administrators have been sending out some messages and meetings to their students to keep in touch, and our middle schools did a virtual spirit week. So if you have an opportunity for some uplifting messages, there are plenty of those on our websites as well. And just again, ways that we're trying to keep our students connected during our offsite learning program. So that is sort of the superintendent's report in a nutshell.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. And I think we can all agree that the amount of work that you thanked all those people for is certainly deserved. And, we all really appreciate, especially what you're doing, leading this team and this district through all these tough times, unprecedented times. And we really appreciate it very much. We're very, very happy that you're at the helm. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to the chairman's report. The first is the district technology report on page 14. I don't know if anyone had any questions regarding that. I know we're going to have some discussion in a little while about the technology infrastructure bid results, but if anyone had any question on page 14. If not, we can move on to facilities, which is the monthly report on page 15. I don't know, Jim, if you'd like to chime in on that, or?
Well, and I would just like to point out that the facilities report, we really sort of put it into two different kind of lenses. The first sort of what we were accomplishing basically through the month of March before we closed down. And it was asked of us at a certain point, kind of what were the custodians doing while we were still open. And so that's kind of the coronavirus shutdown report is basically what we've been able to do is start many of the projects that would typically occur during the summertime. So just doing sort of our preparation for the schools or sort of their big annual cleaning. It's actually kind of critical that we do that now because we are at least hopeful that at some point when the school does reopen, we will actually need to provide more of our extended school year or summer school services than we have traditionally done in the past. And so that means our buildings may actually be occupied for a longer period of time, which makes it more difficult to clean them during the summer. So our ability to start some of that work now is going to actually be able to help us out if we're back in the buildings during most of July and August.
Okay, thank you. We could now move on to the Finance Committee. We have the discussion and possible action on contracts over $35,000 with the athletic trainer on page 17 being first.
Yes, and for the record, there was certainly much discussion, and Terry did take the AFC through it, and of course answered all the questions regarding the differences or the potential impact of COVID on all these. The AFC did vote in favor of all these with one minor, a friendly amendment that I think Terry can take us through.
Thank you, Pat.
So the first one we have is the athletic trainer service. It's an annual contract that we negotiate with them. We have negotiated a 2.5% increase. They did request a higher increase. We brought it down. Last year, they had just a 2% increase. They're currently, we're not using their services for April, do not anticipate most of May needing it. And the bill for the current year will be reduced to reflect that. And should we not use them in May at all or in June, it will also reflect that. So we are asking you to award a one-year contract to Rehab Associates for $63,633.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion on that and we can discuss?
I'd be happy to make the motion.
Thank you.
Can I
Second?
see Steve making a second?
Steve's got the second. Thank you, Steve. Do we have any discussion on that?
Just, I have a quick question. Where's the savings that we've already budgeted for? Where's the savings going? How are we reallocating it?
Well, in the forecast, you'll see that we have, when we look at the overall balances in the account, and then we will be asking for a few things this month and then a couple of things next month. So we'll be asking to repurpose that money, one in technology, one in textbooks, and one for food service this month.
Okay, so essentially all of the kind of switching the contracts around, that money will be repurposed to go towards whatever it is that we still have in remaining budget needs?
Either Yeah, either in remaining budget needs or looking at what we were going to spend end of year funds on to offset next year's budget to help bring that down.
Okay,
And I do apologize. This is kind of a chicken and an egg thing because we could either talk about the contracts first and then talk about where our savings is in the budget, or do the savings in the budget and then talk about the contracts. Know that all of these things are very much intertwined, and we will kind of get around, like we'll come full circle by the time we're all done. But I do appreciate the question, Andrea, because yeah, they're all connected.
okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, why don't we call the vote? All those in favor?
Nah, Mr. Belfonte.
Roll call. Sorry, you can start with me.
Sorry. So I will call the roll. Mr. Belfonte.
Yes.
Ms. Burke. Yes. Mr. Brow.
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson. I see a thumbs up. Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo. Thumbs up. Ms. Eichler. Thumbs up. Mr. Howard.
Yes.
All right. Ms. McCrevin. Thumbs up. Wonderful. Mr. Reed.
Yes.
And Dr. Turner.
Yes.
All right. It is unanimous. Thank you.
And yes for me too, Dr. Byers.
Oh, who did I miss? Oh,
Howard,
Ms.
Andre
Howard,
Howard.
I'm so sorry. I gotcha.
Okay, so we can move on to item 2, the snow removal, ice control, and sanding surfaces.
So yes, this is year 2 of a 3-year contract. The service was bid last April, and Denny's Landscaping won the bid at that time. We've been satisfied with their services, and we are asking to renew for a second year. This is bid at various levels of snowfall, so it's not a set price. You will see later in the forecast where there's a savings this year because we had very little snow. So it's based on inches. So it's not a flat dollar.
Would someone like to make a motion to accept that?
I'll make that motion. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Howard.
That's Mr. Reed.
Oh, Mr. Reed, sorry.
Read.
All right. So I see a first from Mr. Reed,
Second.
a second from Mr. Brow.
Okay. Any discussion regarding this? I know there was some discussion during the finance committee meeting that we are basically only paying for what we use. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Mr. Belfonte.
Again, I will defer to Dr. Byers, and I will wait for you to prompt us.
Mr. Belfonte.
Thumbs up.
All right. Thumbs up. Ms. Burke. Thumbs up. Mr. Brow.
Yes.
All right. Ms. Cardozo.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson. Thumbs up. Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Excellent. Mr. DeMayo.
Yes.
Okay, great. Ms. Eichler. Thumbs up. Mr. Howard. Thumbs up. Ms. Hubbard.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. McCrevin.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Excellent. And Dr. Turner.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item is the trash and recycling removal services.
So this is year 3 of a 3-year contract with All American Waste. We are happy with their service, so we are recommending that we continue for the 3rd year. Jim and I are looking at the actual pickups we're having this year and seeing if there's anything we can negotiate. The high school still has significant volume with the lunch program happening and the custodians cleaning the building, and now Orange is open as a second site, and we'll still need the regular pickup. So we may have some room at Bethany to negotiate a little bit for this year with the amount of pickups that happen.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to accept?
I see Ms. Carlson. Second from Ms. Cardozo. How's that?
Any discussion? Okay, seeing.
All right, hearing that, I'll call the roll.
Thank you.
Mr. Belfonte.
Yes.
Ms. Burke. Thumbs up. Mr. Rao,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson, thumbs up. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo, thumbs up. Ms. Eichler, thumbs up. Mr. Howard,
Thumbs up.
awesome. Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin,
Thumbs up.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yep.
Fabulous. Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is the safety services.
So this is year one of a 3-year contract to Fuss and O'Neill at a price of $13,450. The pricing is from the Connecticut State bid list. They were awarded the contract from the state of Connecticut for that pricing. They provide services for asbestos plans, our safety training for custodians for throughout the year, and that has taken place for this year, and this is the contract for next year.
Okay, can someone please make a motion to accept?
So I see Carla
And a
and I
second?
see Robin seconding.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Burke, did you have something?
Just have a question. So who did we have prior to this, or did we have this prior?
We had Fuss and O'Neill.
Oh, we did. Okay. Is
Yeah.
the price the same or similar to prior?
I think it's similar. It's I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it's in that price range. But it's the state. They usually win. They have won the state contract price before, so we usually work off of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, guess we'll call the vote.
Okay, so hearing no further discussion, Mr. Belfanti,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Brow,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson, thumbs up. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo, thumbs up. Ms. Eichler, thumbs up. Mr. Howard, thumbs up. Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin, thumbs up. Mr. Reed,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Okay, I got everyone? Excellent. Thank you. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. The next item is technology, the network infrastructure upgrade.
So we went out to bid in February. We had a walkthrough in January. Mr. DeRosa and his team opened it up, and 8 bidders, potential bidders, attended the walkthrough to see what our current infrastructure setup was, to have valuable information in order to make proposals to us. At the end of February, the bids were due, and we had 6 of those vendors submit proposals. There was quite a wide range, but there was only one that really brought us to a better level than where we are at now. If you remember back in the fall, Mr. DeRosa talked about our infrastructure needs, and it estimated the price to be about 1.2 million. The bid that actually reflected a plan similar to what he identified is about 1.47. We are looking to later in the package to buy some of the equipment that is not eligible for E-rate funds, and we are also in the middle of applying for E-rate funds. Should the board award the contract to this vendor, we will continue that process tomorrow. And that will hopefully bring the 5-year lease purchase price down into our budget range, because we had budgeted $225,000, and this is about closer to $300,000 per year. So trying to do a little purchasing now and take advantage of E-rate funds, we are looking to get that budget in there. But if the board approves the contract, we can move forward with those other pieces of how to finance and fund.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to approve, and then we can discuss?
So I see Andrea making the motion for a first, and I see Sheila for a second.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure there's going to be some questions on this.
So actually, I'm going to invite Mr. DeRosa, who is hovering in the background, into the meeting so he can answer questions.
Great. Maybe we could start out with Terry. Terry, what were some of the discussions at the AFC?
There was a lot of questions about the difference in the range, and Sean answered those as to, why the lowest bid, within the $600,000 range and the highest bid is, 1.4, but they're two different levels of infrastructure. And if you'd like, Sean could explain that.
Would you like?
Well, I do think it should be important for the board to note first that the point of having the walkthrough with the original 8 bidders was our opportunity to lay out very bluntly what it was that we wanted. So I don't want anyone, so I want to make sure everybody understands that the bidders were provided the opportunity, even though it wasn't necessarily written in the RFP. Part of the reason for that initial walkthrough was for us to say, this is exactly what we need and why we need it. So that gave them an opportunity to at least understand what we were looking for. I think another nice part of the process, and Sean, you can explain this a little bit more, but we developed an FAQ system where if any one of those bidders asked us a question, we shared that answer back with all the other bidders so that nobody had an unfair advantage of information as we were going through this process. And so that also allowed anybody who was coming in an opportunity to have the same sort of knowledge base before they actually made their final bid. And then Sean, I don't know if you want to talk about the car analogy for the difference between what was proposed and what we got.
Sure, I can. So, I mean, just to go over it really quickly, yeah, so the car analogy is basically, if you look at the bottom end of some of the proposals that we got, it would be sort of like taking your current car and repainting it. So it looks really shiny and new, but it still sort of has 180,000 miles on it, and it's chugging along. Maybe give it a tune-up. The proposal that we're looking at is more like buying a brand new car, knowing that we're going to need a bigger, better car in the future and right now. So some of the main points that this proposal has that some of the other ones don't is the multi-gigging at all of our switches in all of our closets. So what we really wanted to do was provide infrastructure like we had talked about earlier this fall for the 1-to-1 in the next 2 to 3 years and currently. And a lot of that is going to be via Wi-Fi. So we asked specifically for multi-gig access points in every classroom so that we had between 2 and 5 gigabytes of bandwidth in every classroom to support our students. This is the only plan and the only proposal that came through with multi-gig ports in all of our closets. So we can carry that 2 to 5 gigs of bandwidth from each access point straight through our closets and out to the internet, where a lot of the other proposals came through with multi-gig access points, but only 1 gig ports on our switches, which created a bottleneck in all of our switching closets. So it's a cost savings if you're willing to accept that. We just didn't think that this is something that we'd be willing to accept. It would pretty much leave us in the same position we're currently in with just newer hardware if we went with single gigs in every closet. The other thing that TBNG was able to offer us was a new security audit and baseline, some extra services that they are able to provide because they're a bigger company that have those capabilities, and failover and load balancing at all 3 of our locations instead of just the one. So that's that redundancy that we had talked about. So when we kind of broke all of them down and went through them line by line, we really felt like TBNG was the only one that not only upgraded all of our systems, but brought us to the next level and got us ready for what's inevitably coming down the pipe.
Thank you.
So Mr. Brow seems to have a question.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And one of the questions I had asked, because that was, I think when we talked before, we were talking about having leasing some of these materials or some of these servers. And one of my concerns was we were getting great, maybe faster servers or faster switchers with more capacity, but there was no long-term benefit. But one of the advantages that I asked earlier in the AFC is that we are leasing to buy, or leasing to own, I should say. So we will own the materials at the end. So going back to the car analogy, if we're going to try to stretch more years out of that same car, better to have a better model up front so that it lasts and meets our needs longer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any other questions regarding the proposal? Just out of curiosity, we're talking about those rebates. Do we have a dollar figure, Terry, or we kind of know it's going to be in a certain range, and when would that money come?
So there's estimated about 700,000 that we think is E-ratable. That would be about a 40% reimbursement rate, and that would be, we would apply each year of the 5 years we were leasing to own. So we would take that and break it down and let them, we would send them our contract. And so we get a portion of it each year, but each year we would apply. We can't pay, if we're only paying for it a portion a year, we can't get E-rate funds for the entire amount in the first year. So we have put the bid out on to E-rate, and the time frame is up. So now we can award the contract. So should the board approve this vendor tonight, we can award the contract on the E-rate system and then further the application along to find out. The funding is for July 1 and forward.
Okay. And are we making a transfer later on in the meeting for the 300,000 to get them started?
Yes.
You're asking for a transfer later on for engineering and software that is not eligible for E-rate funds.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, or especially for Sean, if you have anything else? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add that the AFC also discussed adding very simple words to the motion. So the AFC actually did a friendly amendment to the motion and simply added a few words. If Dr. Byers would read that.
Yes, so it was, they amended the motion to recommend award to the infrastructure upgrade project to TB&J of Milford, Connecticut, not to exceed the proposed price of $1,477,750, with the idea that to discuss with them if there were any options for further negotiation. One of the things that Mr. DeRosa noted is that while we would like to, we are slated to start this infrastructure project immediately, and while schools close, we'll even start doing some of the wire pulling. Ironically, some of the parts from China are not as easily available at this point in time as they would have been, say, 2 months ago. So if there's an opportunity to negotiate, we'll see if there's any chance of bringing that bid proposal down, so long as we are still operating within all of the regulations of the bid process to begin with.
Okay, that makes sense. So do we need someone to make a motion, a friendly motion for the amendment?
I don't think you've made the amendment motion yet. So
no, we haven't. So we need to make it. So we have a first and a second on the original. So now I need a first and a second on the amendment, which is the not to exceed language. And then we would be able to vote on the amended motion.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to make that motion, please?
So I see Pat with a first. I see Robin with a second. So the first roll call I will call is just to make the amendment to the motion. So Mr. Belfanti?
Thumbs up.
Okay, sorry, thumbs up. Ms. Burke? Thumbs up. Mr. Brow? Thumbs up. Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo? Thumbs up. Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Ah.
Oh, I think she froze.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin.
Thumbs up.
I'm sorry. Mr. Reed
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Belfonte, you have a vote done on that, on the amendment. Now I think you're going forward for the actual motion.
Okay.
Would you like, are you going for discussion now or are you going right to the vote?
Well, if anyone else has anything to discuss, we should do it now. Okay. All right, well, seeing none, I think we could go to the vote.
Okay. Mr. Belfanti?
Yes.
Ms. Burke? Okay. Mr. Brow?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo?
I will abstain also.
Okay. Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the next item is the discussion of the monthly financial statements on page 20.
So there was a lot of changes this month. The forecast includes a lot of estimates based on what we know now and what might happen for the rest of the year. Revenue, not a lot of changes at this point. The state has told us that we will get our funding as planned for excess cost. The real change there is building rentals. We assume that the buildings probably will not be open for rental by the public for the remainder of the year. On the expense side is where we really see a lot of fluctuations in salaries. The substitutes are currently laid off. We have lower estimates in overtime. And we are anticipating that there will not be a full sports season for spring sports, and there will be a reduction there. So we will see savings on the salary lines. The corresponding payroll taxes will go down with that. The offset to that is, this is my best guess as to what unemployment could cost us. We're self-insured, so we pay all of the unemployment cost that come to us. So we're estimating we will see all those. It's difficult to know, who will get what rate depending on how many dependents and whatnot. So hopefully that's the worst case scenario for 3 months. On professional services, we will see some savings with the athletic trainer, like I mentioned in the forecast right now, we're showing April and May, possibly we'll see June. The SRO services provided by the town of Woodbridge in here is estimated right now through May 20th, knowing that we won't be open till at least then. And we will reassess should we not be open for the rest of the year and adjust that credit back from the town of Woodbridge. Transportation, the decrease expected at this point is due to field trips and reduced sporting events for spring. We are currently in negotiations and have a tentative agreement with our owner operators on the day-to-day transportation into school. That is not reflected here. We're hoping to get documents signed this week, and that will be reflected in the May report. There's not much adjusted on special ed at this point. Dr. Brandt, Tom Brandt is working with the outplacement providers to make sure that he's satisfied with the level of services that are still being provided, and we're working on those payments if there will be any changes to those payments. I am anticipating in May asking for probably close to $100,000 for the cafeteria account. We know from, I can't remember if it was February, March, I reported how we had $25,000 in repairs of the equipment that we own. When the program shut down in mid-March, it was at a $21,000 deficit, and it really has no opportunity to make up those funds. March, is a month that they would normally do very well. It's a full month of school. And there's no opportunity. There's no sales at this point happening in the food service program. So Dr. Byers pointed out in the AFC meeting, this isn't in relation to the distribution program. This is in anticipation that we will also incur $25,000 next year in repairs, and we have nothing in the budget for that. So we still have 3 months of a contract with Chartwells for April, May, and June. And I am trying to work on some sort of concession with that contract, but we will still be in that contract even if we are not operating school and serving lunches as we normally do. Good news, there'll be a little bit less utilities used. Jim is estimating about 20,000. The snow removal, as we talked about, very little snow this year, so we're saving about $27,000 on snow removal. Health insurance is really a tough one to call. It's currently at 94%. The March claims were down just about 75,000. Things that I've read and been in discussion with our consultants is that, while we might see spikes from individuals who are ill with the COVID-19 virus, we may see a decline. We will certainly see a decline in, routine doctor visits and procedures. So right now they may balance out, but that spike may actually happen next year when people are able to return to getting regular routine procedures done. So right now we'll see how April comes in, but not really projecting a large swing in health services. And that is pretty much the forecast.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding the overview and the forecast? Okay. All right, I guess we can move on to the Director of Finance Administration, approved transfers under $3,000.
That's for your information if you have any questions on those items.
All right. And the next page would be the budget transfers over $3,000.
And we have the one that we talked about earlier as part of how to finance and make a good financing package that will work with next year's budget. And that is to pay for some of those costs this year. And we're asking for $300,000 of this year's current fund balance in order to make some purchases and bring down that 5-year lease purchase payment on the technology infrastructure.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to move to approve the following budget transfer to cover the initial cost of network infrastructure upgrades for the district, moving $300,000 from tuition private out to net equipment replacement.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do we have a second?
Ms. McCrevin.
Thank you. Any further comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Ms. Burke? Yes. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo? Yes. Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes. Let's move on to item 8, the discussion and possible action on Board of Education approved budget, annual district meeting and preparation of explanatory text on page 52.
So it seems like we've been having this conversation for an inordinately long amount of time, but let's go back in time a little bit. So on March 11th, which was our last board meeting we were together, the Board of Education had approved a budget that was a 2.73% increase over our current year budget. This was discrepant from what the AFC had approved, which was a 2.49. So 2 weeks ago on April 6th, we had a special AFC meeting. And at that meeting, by that point in time, we were able to have a little bit better sense of where we were at this year with our close of year funds. And we had a discussion with the AFC. I expressed that we would be able to achieve the 2.49 if we were able to make textbook purchases with current year funds as part of essentially end of year purchases. And that would actually be able to bring us to the 2.49 that AFC had approved. I did that with some caution. I wouldn't normally have the AFC make the recommendation for where budget changes or cuts occur. But in this case, because that could have a dramatic upswing in the subsequent year in the textbook line, I wanted to make sure that they understood that that's not necessarily the recommended budgeting process, but it was one that we could achieve this year fairly safely because of some of the savings that Ms. Loomis has identified essentially as a result of the COVID closure. So basically at that April 6th AFC meeting, they essentially moved forward again with the 2.49% budget approval to move that to the board. And it came with an understanding that that would be actualized by using year-end funds to purchase some of the textbooks. So that is where we currently stand. So because of our bylaws, the board now has to come back around again and hopefully approve a budget that is in line with the AFC. And then we'll be able to move forward with our truncated budget process for the next couple of weeks. So that is kind of an explanation of where we are, and what we're looking for tonight is hopefully a board approval that mirrors what the AFC recommendation was.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Byers. While we're on this subject, would you mind going through the meetings that are upcoming and how those are going to work? Specifically, the district meeting, the public hearing, and how that's discussed?
So a week from today, we will be holding our district public hearing. So that's an opportunity for the public to weigh in on the budget recommendation. And the way that it'll work is it will be a Zoom meeting. All of the board members will be invited to attend. At that meeting, I will do a brief budget presentation, very similar to the one that you saw in March, or maybe it was February, but it will reflect our new percentages. And at the end of that meeting, what we will do is we will have a link to this Zoom meeting. And the public will be able to then Zoom in. They will have to participate, state their name, their address, and they would participate in public comment. It's really just an opportunity for the board to hear the public comment. And once we have heard from the public, then we would just end that meeting. So that would be similar to the district meeting that we would have had any other point in time, where it just would have been in a much bigger setting. Then on May 4th, we will have our annual district meeting. That is also something that we typically would have had. So at the annual district meeting, what we will have at that point is an opportunity through a Google form for the public to provide some feedback. What we can't do, we won't necessarily read those Google forms verbatim, word for word, but instead what we'll be able to do is summarize them so that we can have a general sense of where the public feedback is through those Google forms. That will be open for several days, but we'll have a cutoff period so we can all kind of put all the information together in time for the meeting. And again, it will be an opportunity where I would present the budget. And at the end of that meeting, what would have happened is the board would have moved and opened up the referendum. But because the executive order does not allow for the referendums this year, instead the annual meeting will end and we will actually open a special board meeting. And at that special board meeting, the board will make a vote on the budget. And if that budget passes the board, then the budget is approved.
Okay, thank you. So it's really a matter of comfort.
I'm sorry, Dr. Turner, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. Do you have the times for those meetings?
Yes, I do. The district meeting is at 6:30 p.m. So that's next Monday.
Okay.
And then the annual district meeting is Monday, May 4th, and it'll start at 5:30 p.m. And I believe we have the board meeting listed at 6 o'clock p.m. But we'll obviously have a little flexibility in time if the annual district meeting extends over past 6.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, it's a matter of what people want to put a motion on the table for, right? We can either go for the 2.73 or the 2.49, it looks like.
Yes, so the board, remember, is at 2.73 and AFC is at 2.49. AFC has come through at 2.49 twice. And one of the discussions we had was to get feedback from them if we were to look at purchasing textbooks with end of year funds. And we did that and they moved it forward with that understanding. So really it is a question whether the board wants to stick with the 2.73 that you all originally voted for back in March, or if you are ready to maybe look at the 2.49% with an understanding that Ms. Loomis and I both see a path to get there.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Krevin.
I'd like to make the motion that we take the recommendation of the AFC and go with 2.49% increase.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I see Robin, sorry, I saw a lot of seconds, but it was just the first little chicklet I laid my eyes on.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have further discussion regarding it? Ms. Hubbard?
I have a question. So going back to the money savings that we're going to gain from contracts, that's going to go towards that 2.49. That's the way about getting there instead of the 2.73.
So yes, so those end of year textbooks that we would purchase this year to be used next year, some of that would come from the savings that we have from contracts or from the services that we are not currently paying for and need to provide.
And if we didn't have that, the money that we proposed that we would be spending on that was coming from where for the textbooks?
So
that was
it would have been part of next year's budget, or we would have had to look at a different reduction in next year's budget to get down to the 2.49%.
And just if I'm remembering correctly, that reduction would have set us back further, correct?
I mean, the things that are in that budget are the things that I believe, and I believe collectively as an administrative team, we need to move the district forward or to keep us steady on our feet. And so yes, so it would not have allowed us to do what we hope to accomplish. What exactly that was would have been a lot more discussion. I hate to say it, but the textbooks is an easy solve for this year, and we certainly have the money, and it's probably a good solution in kind of what I would say a fiscal uncertainty that we have for the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Okay, and just as a point of information, I know we all received a couple of days ago the budget reduction matrix, which was updated, Dr. Byers, and the last section is the items discussed as potential cuts remaining in budget. So at the 2.49 level, those 6 items, starting with social worker and benefits, those are included in the 249 budget.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Turner was first, and then Mr.
No, go ahead. Yep.
Thank you.
Do you continue to feel that what's happening for our next year's budget is uncertain enough that it's not blowing up badly enough that the 2.49 is an acceptable idea now?
I think we have a lot of uncertainty with next year's budget, and we will try to accommodate that in 2 ways. The first is you'll see probably not in this month, but in the following one, we would be looking at that 1% that we are able to put into a capital reserve account. And we would use that as a potential cushion for some of the items that we are identifying as maybe the long-term effect of the school closure, specifically related around special education costs. If it turns out we don't need them, that money in that capital reserve account could certainly, it's a good baseline that we need to look at building up to do the roof replacement in a couple of years anyway. So that is our first level. The second is, somebody made a comment about lacrosse helmets. I think it was at the AFC meeting, and they were glad that we purchased the lacrosse helmets. Well, those aren't going to go bad between this year and next year. What we will do next year is we will start the year with a 15% holdback on all discretionary accounts. So what that means is that any equipment or supply account where we have some discretion over that, we would only allow 85% spending. And that 15% would add to an additional cushion that we would have in case we have some long-term costs that are associated with the current school closure. And again, those are going to range anywhere from additional special education costs for compensatory services, potential legal fees, because we are maybe not providing what some people think that we should be in terms of a free and appropriate education. We don't know what's going to happen with health insurance and how that's going to all play out. So we have a couple of plans in place for next year just to see that we have a little bit of a safety net going forward. So yes, I think the 2.49 is a fair assessment right now. I would also say that that goes with a little caution. If you remember, I think the one that I'm the most not worried about, but we always anticipated 5 retirements as part of that budget and bringing people in at a lower salary. At this point, we've only had 1. So we already know that our salary account is not quite where we were hoping that it would be by this time of the year, but that's what happens when you have to make an estimate in November for what happens in August the following year.
And you feel that with the 2.49 and a 15% cut back on that to build a margin of safety, you can still do the operations you need to?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good questions. Thank you, Dr. Turner. Any other comments or questions regarding this?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment.
Yes.
Just to be aware that if we take this money this year, which I think is beneficial for our towns, and I think in the best interest of the students, next year's budget, when we're negotiating next year's budget for the following year, the line item for books will look higher, because of the larger increase, the differential, because of the 0 that's being planned. So just an FYI for people.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why I think, it was brought up at the level of the AFC. So the townspeople are knowledgeable of that, because I think that's an important point that you bring up. Okay. Any other comments? If we
Yeah, quick question.
Sure.
Quick question. How are the townspeople going to vote on this? Did you say that earlier? I just didn't hear it, but what's the plan to get all the people out to vote for this or not? I don't know. So is there a plan in place with COVID-19?
So I can't understand, Steve. I don't know if anybody else was able to pick it up on the question.
Yeah, I could hear it. He was asking what the plan was, but Dr. Byers, you went over it before, where we would have a special meeting on the 27th, right?
Yes.
On the 27th.
So what we would hope tonight is that as soon as we have a approval of the budget percentage, the second motion that we have to have this evening is the preparation of the explanatory text, which is basically that one document that gets mailed to every single household in Bethany, Orange, and Woodbridge. And it sort of summarizes the budget. We know we're working in a time crunch. So in perfect transparency, we already have it written. It's already gone before bond council. Our board secretary has already taken a look at it. So if the board were to approve the 2.49 tonight, we actually have a team of people ready tomorrow to start making copies of it. so that we can get it in the mail ASAP. That should hopefully get into households pretty close to the end of the week if it's not there by the time of the district meeting. The public hearing. It definitely will be in people's hands by the May 4th meeting. And then again, we have both the district meeting public hearing on April 27th, where we can get face-to-face feedback from the voters. And then again on May 4th, where we will have the Google form where they can provide some written feedback. At that point too, Ms. Loomis has already, you guys all know the big budget book. So we will have the revised edition of that up on the website that will reflect accurately whatever the percentage is that the board has adopted. And then we would also have abbreviated sort of presentations that we would use for both the public hearing and the annual district meeting that would kind of summarize all of that.
So I think if I heard Steve correctly, I think he was talking about a machine vote out in the public. That is not anticipated at all.
No,
right?
it's actually against the executive orders that we have right now. There will not be a referendum. The governing body of the municipality, their vote determines what the budget is. And so when the board has the special meeting on May 4th, your vote
that takes the place,
determines the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's not any other discussion, I think we can call the vote.
All right, Mr. Belfonte,
Yes.
Ms. Burke? Thumbs up, I see a yes. Mr. Brow?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo? See a thumbs up and a yes. Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Dr. Turner?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The motion passes at a 2.49% budget increase.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to authorizing Amity Regional School District Number 5 to prepare an explanatory text for the district meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Second?
I see Carla.
Okay.
All right, and again, just to summarize, it is the authorization for us to prepare and print and distribute the explanatory text, which is basically a two-sided summary of the budget. And we will have that out as quickly as possible to our voters.
Thank you. Okay, can we call the vote?
Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Ms. Burke? Thumbs up, yes. Mr. Brow?
Yes.
Thumbs up, yes. Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson? Thumbs up, yes. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo? Thumbs up, yes. Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Thumbs up, yes. Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin? Thumbs up, yes. Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Wonderful. Motion passes.
Great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is an update on the investment and borrowing impacts.
So I wanted to let you know that I reached out to both fiduciary investment advisors, Mike Goss, our actuaries at Hooker and Holcomb, Steve Lemansky, and then Mark Chaltman of Hilltop Securities for our upcoming bond sale to see what the volatility in the market impact will be on all of those situations. So you can see that they each provided me a little commentary. In summary, there is still a lot of volatility, though we certainly saw some down tick into the market. There have been days of rebounding. It is not similar to, some of the other major market days, such in 2008 with the banking crisis. This is a different situation. So the market is reacting differently with the volatility. There was some discussion about bond sales and whether there was a market for municipal bonds. And Initially, there was some downtrend in that. That seems to be coming back a little bit too. We do use a 5-year smoothing method with our actuarial report. So one, we have really 2 months. We have May and June to ride this out and see where the plans end up. The new actuary report will be based on where June 30th fund balances are. And then the next year's budget figures are not impacted. They are based off of the current plan. If there needs to be smoothing done, it will be done over 5 years, as I said, and the first year would be the 21-22 budget that would reflect where we might need to increase pension contributions or OPEB contributions based on the market activity now. The bond sale is scheduled for early July. Again, we'll have a few options. Should the interest rates for borrowing be high, we can do a short-term note. We can do the borrowing options with a call option, so that if a better financial circumstances arises a year out, 2 years out, we can then refinance the bonds. We did that several times when we did the major construction projects in 2006. So we still do feel that there will be a buyer for the bonds, and we will have a way to manage how we finance that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Loomis? Okay, thank you, guys. I think we covered the hearing and the meeting well enough. So the next item is the items for the next agenda are due by May 4th. And before we adjourn, I just wanted to thank all of you for all the work you're doing. It's certainly a difficult environment for all of us with work and family and keeping tabs on everything that's going on. And so I just wanted to thank all of you for the work you're doing and the time commitment you're putting in. So thank you. With that, we'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay.
Mr. Brow, Mr. DeMayo, I'm not calling the roll. Everybody just give me a thumbs up. Thanks, everyone. You all have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.